Hey, best ever listeners, welcome to the best ever CRE show. This is Beyond Multifamily. I'm Amanda Cruz, joined with Ash Patel. Ash, it's been a minute. What's up?
Oh, Amanda, doing well. How are you?
I am good. I'm good.
Good.
Last time we chatted, you were a day from selling a property. Did you
Yes,
sell it?
we did. This guy put us through the ringer. And again, it was dirty what he did. He put into the contract that every tenant has to sign his estoppel letter. And knowing that that was never going to happen, and his attorneys admitted they were going to use that as their ace in the hole. We got all these estoppels to their satisfaction, and they said we're still not going to sign off on it because up until the last minute we want to weigh out. Who does that? That's such nonsense, right? Like, have a little bit of moral.
Yeah.
I'm from Jersey, and I thought that was dirty. Like, that's just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, part of me wants to know who their attorneys are because obviously they know what to look out for. They know what to put in contracts. Even if you don't want to play dirty like that, those attorneys know what the heck they're doing. So that may not be a bad group.
Yeah, shame on that attorney too, because it's really borderline unethical. It's not cool. So, yeah,
All right. So you sold the property.
correct.
Is this the one you wanted 8 million for?
Yes, we ended up getting 7.4. And of
Okay.
course, the brokers we had brokers that assured us we can get 9 million for it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, commercial brokers play the same game residential realtors do.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Okay, give me the high level. High level. What'd you buy it for? What'd you put
Bought it
into
for
it? How
5
long did you hold it?
million. Yeah, 3 years, 3.4 years is how long we held it. Bought it for 5, sold it for 7.4. We were paying our investors a 22% preferred return. So for every 100,000, they got 22,000 a year in pref. And ultimately when we sold, their annualized cash on cash was 31% over the 3.4 years.
I
So
think that's
I
hilarious because one, nobody does a 22% pref, but I think you did that because multifamily was having a tough time and you just wanted to rub it in their faces. Yes.
You're 100% right. We used to go to these multifamily conferences and nobody wanted to speak to us. We were the stepchildren because we couldn't answer their door count. How many doors do you have? They get the hell out of here. Doors, right? So we were never taken seriously at any of these conferences up until maybe 2 years ago. Then everybody wants to talk to us. Hey, I've been meaning to get into retail. Can't find any deals in multifamily. Hey, tell me about this office thing. Like, multifamily sucks. And there's people that have been looking for multifamily deals for 2 years. I just had dinner with John Casman, another fellow host here, and he's just like he cannot find a deal. And he says the same thing everyone else does. He's often, second best. And the person that beat him, or the entity that beat him, overpaid for the deal at numbers that just don't pencil out. So there's still stupid money in multifamily. Hard to compete, right?
I get that. It's hard to compete in mobile home parks. I just had a conversation with the broker this week. He was asking the stabilized price for a value add asset. I'm like, well, I can't pay that price, or else why would I take on the risk of the time and the value add component in order to do the work to stabilize the property? I can't pay the pre stabilized price. And he was like, well, other people are banking on prices being higher in the future. That was like, that's what his answer was as a broker.
Yeah. Back to your earlier question. Yes, I did it just to give the multifamily people a big middle finger, but it probably backfired more than it helped because for the 3.5 years that we were doing this, people probably thought we were a scam, right? Like, there's no way. I've had people, commercial people that I've interviewed on this podcast, and one guy who's like my idol, he's like, Ash, I don't know what you think you're doing, but get out of that deal fast. He's like, time's going to kill you. And I'm like, no, not really. Like, we're good. And again, we did it. We said what we were going to do, right? Now, in today's market, if I advertised a 22% pref, I would get zero investors.
For sure, everybody would think it was a scam. And
Yeah,
and you're not going to find a property where you can pay 22% out of the gate,
correct.
honestly, today. But
Correct.
all right, well, hell yeah, good for you. Congratulations on the sale. And for your investors, 31% returns. Heck yeah, good for them. All right, should we bring in now Derek Peterson? So this
Yes,
guy has a pretty good thing going. He calls himself the chief compounding officer for Avira Capital Investments. So either he takes himself too seriously or, he has a good personality. So we'll be the judge of that.
I want to find out about that. Chief Compounding Officer. Building ADUs in California. So this is where you could turn garages into apartments, right? I'm curious to learn more about that. He
For
also
sure.
says that he is a proponent of financial freedom, but doesn't believe most people really want to be free.
All right, let's do it.
And
Let's bring him in. Derek Peterson, welcome to the best ever CRE show. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Ash and Amanda. Thanks for having me. I'm doing
good,
fantastic.
good to have you on, Derek. So let's get started. Your title is Chief Compounding Officer. Give us the background on that.
Okay, well, I'm a fan of Buffett and Munger, of course, and I think when interviewed about his success, Buffett has said many times it's compounding and runway is what he calls it. So he compounding is the eighth whatever wonder of the world, and living a long life has made him the one of the richest men in the world. So I wanted a reminder exactly what I am doing, because you can get caught up chasing a lot of shiny balls and stuff. um, at the end of the day, as investors, we are compounding at the highest rate that we can. And our objective should be to always keep that in mind as we're looking at different investments, different opportunities, things like that. It's all about return on invested capital.
How exactly do you achieve that? Do you keep people's money turning and burning? Do you continuously 1031? Because most syndications, you put money in, you get money out. How does that compound?
Well, keeping your money busy, at the end of the day. So if you got a real estate deal and you're in it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, there's not much you can do about that other than take your pref and put it back to work. Save up your pref to the point where you can put it back to work in doing, hard money, or, a treasury, at 5%, so that you're taking your investment that's coming off of it, your preferred income that's coming off of it, and you are reinvesting and getting interest on the the payout. So that's kind of the definition, right? Is interest and continually rolling that over, and keeping that busy is difficult. So we can talk more about that if you like.
Derek, let's start with what you really do, right? So you're into multifamily, you're into turning non-livable spaces into livable spaces. Can you give the best ever listeners a bit about your sort of your background and what you really focus on now?
Sure. So I was a civil engineer, still am a civil engineer for 27 years, right? So my background is project development, planning, construction, design. Um, Worked on large land development projects here in California. So kind of shifting over to kind of doing it for myself. What isn't really a big leap. It's got a lot of the same pieces, parts. If you're managing a project, it's scope, schedule, and budget. And if you can manage that on a multi-billion-dollar project, which is what I did coming before, focusing on our real estate investments, I was on a $2 billion light rail project in San Diego. So the exposure you get to professional management of projects, I think in my industry is quite high. So, for us to go from a W-2 employee as a civil engineer to developing our own projects is pretty easy in comparison to, if you're coming from a completely different um, career, whatever it be. and you don't understand construction, you don't understand design, that's a long learning curve to be able to do what we're doing. So right now, to get to your point, I took an 8 unit building in San Diego, and we are using the ADU laws in San Diego. So we have what's called ministerial approval that goes through, which basically says the local agencies are mandated to approve our project as long as it's within, it's got its requirements, the box that it must fit in. But the local agencies can't hold up development of our projects if we fit into that box, as opposed to a discretionary review in California can take decades to go through and do the types of development that we're working on right now that's being mandated by the state. So that's a real unique opportunity, and it's only going to grow because, all states in the US need housing, right? I think San Diego is probably just as bad as every other place as far as their deficiency in housing. So they're continuing to allow us to densify and add density, upzone, and do these types of projects. So that is going to be my focus going forward. And they're actually, it used to be that on an existing multifamily property, I was limited to a single detached structure, 2 units. Um, I think Newsom just passed an assembly bill that allows us to build 8 units. So now I can take a multifamily 8 unit that has, the right box, right, that fits in, that fits for the development of the project, and I can build another 8 units. And that's through a ministerial approval process, not discretionary. That's going to take me years to do. So they are mandated to approve me in 60 days.
Derek, tell us a little bit more about this project. So you bought an existing 8 unit multifamily and you're adding another eight ADUs. What does it look like?
That's my target. What I'm doing right now is I took an 8 unit building and I built out garages. I built out storage. I built out carports, which the law allows me to do. And I converted those into 4 additional units. In San Diego, units are going for 300,000 to 400,000 each, depending upon the area. Um, if I can build those units, if I'm building out garages and carports and storage, I've already got the structure around it. I just have to build out the space. And so if I can build those units for 80 or 90 grand a piece and they rent for 1,600, I'm going to do that all day long.
Derek, you guys get really creative with taking garages and storage spaces into apartments. What's the size of those units?
So the smallest, so I'm leasing these up right now in the SDSU area. The smallest units that I have available are 250 square feet. The largest being close to 400 square feet. That's a pretty good sized ADU project.
On
Holy
average,
crap. So
what's the
this is a
rent?
college kid?
These are, I'm right next to college. Like I'm a block from college proper in these cases. So what I'm seeing as far as applicants go is, third year college student, maybe tired of the dorms. And basically, I give them a full kitchen. They have a full bathroom. The living space is tight, but if you've spent any time in Europe, you know that size is kind of is getting smaller. The McMansions are kind of old, and people are kind of getting used to living in smaller spaces. And so you can really creatively deck these out 270 square feet, have a desk, have a bed, have everything you could possibly need, lock and leave. You spend your time on campus anyway, so you want to be able to come back and sleep and, do that kind of thing. You don't need a lot of space.
Have you been to IKEA, Amanda? Have you seen their little small spaces? You can fit an entire
Amazing.
apartment in 250 square feet. Derek, this is California, which is also another bonus for you. What do these units rent for?
So the smallest studios rent for anything between $1,500 to $2,000 for that
Okay, and
size of
the
space.
larger ones go for,
Oh, you could get $3,000 for an ADU in a prime market in San Diego.
and the cap rates that those command, are they five, six?
So our market cap is now expanding to closer to five. Um, I can like I said, I can build these for 80 or 90 grand. So far as the cap rate goes, I don't know what that is on
It's
the
almost it's almost $500,000 in increased value at $2,000 per month.
More
So
than
20,
that, I mean, we're talking about like almost 1.5 million minus the 400 or so he has in. So we're talking like $1 million in increased value
oh
just
yeah.
on the
I'm talking
four
about just
units.
one unit. So 24,000 divided by 0.05, five cap, you're at 480,000 and you're building these for 90. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I will say, let me qualify this, that the smaller ADU projects where you're just building out a garage, like a lot of people are doing now, they're aging in place. So they want to travel and they are building out an ADU in the back for themselves to lock and leave. And then they're renting out their front house, which covers all their expenses and probably gives them enough to travel on, right? So those types of people and those types of projects, those are much easier than what I'm doing. Um, if I were somebody new, I would look for that duplex or look for that single family home that has a garage that can be converted, and maybe you can house hack that way. That's a fantastic way to utilize it as a new person that's trying to grow wealth, is buy a single family home in San Diego and do ADU in the garage and live in it and rent out the house. I mean, fantastic way to house hack. What I'm going through is a much more Wild West, I call it, because the city of San Diego is quite progressive on their interpretation of ADU laws. So they allow us to do more than some of the other local agencies in San Diego County. I'm saying there's a lot of cities in San Diego County. San Diego proper is just a city, and they're more progressive. Um, I actually have a YouTube channel where I documented along the way from when we broke ground on this ADU project in SDSU all the way through to where we are now and leasing out those units. And it is not an easy process. And I'm a civil engineer. So you just get all these crazy inspectors that come out and they're not used to, they don't like these ADUs. And I'm not saying it's intentional, but it kind of feels like they're nitpicking you to death on stuff. And then you have other inspectors that seem more on board with what the city wants. And you glide through the process quite a bit easier.
You got to ask for those young inspectors to come out. Just get their phone numbers, try to schedule with them.
It's about building your network. If you guys are into development, in your local agency, you want to know the senior inspectors, you want to know everybody on that staff, because you might need to make some phone calls at some point, and it's good to know them, have a relationship that you've built.
Derek, your background is a civil engineer. That gives you an incredible leg up. How difficult would this be for the average person?
I think the large projects would be a difficult undertaking to jump right into. Like I was saying, the single family homes, those have a different permitting process. In San Diego, we have combo permits, which means you basically get the same inspector, and they're not specialists. On a commercial level project, five and up, like what I'm dealing with. I have the plumbing is being inspected by plumbers, old plumbers that have come to the city to work. the electricals being inspected by, electrician, a journeyman electrician. And so, um, the scrutiny is at a much higher level on the commercial projects. And I don't think that unless somebody's coming from the industry, either construction or engineering, should they take on a big one first. I would take on a smaller one and think that life is so easy going through the combination permit process, which, it's a lot easier than what I'm dealing with.
Derek, you figured out how to turn a garage into a livable unit. What if you had vacant space? Can you buy one of those almost like at Lowe's or Home Depot ADUs? Like, they have those nice sheds they came out with during COVID, like offices, all that. Can you sort of buy those prefab and put them in the backyard?
They are doing all sorts of crazy stuff in California, basically prefab, and then they truck them in. And I mean, they can build them a lot cheaper that way, right? You're building
Derek, it sounds easier than what you did. So should people do that?
it. Well, you have less control over construction too, right? So, I mean, they like to build the same exact thing over and over and over and over again. If I want a custom build, I need to have an architect and do stick, because, just a prefab rectangle might work. And if you're just trying to get her done, right, it might work. But you have less control over the construction, design amenities, things like that.
Are there still setback rules you have to abide by, or are
Yeah,
those thrown
there's
out the window?
Yeah, so that would be the limiting factor through this ministerial approval process. When I was saying the box has the setbacks. The box still has floor area ratios that you cannot exceed, but they're upzoning or down upzoning, so they're adding density. So the FARs are increasing in certain areas in San Diego. So so they're allowing us a bigger box that we can fit our project into, if that makes sense.
So you're leasing up these spaces right now. What are you going to do when they're fully leased? Are you going to hold this or are you going to burn and churn?
So the business plan right now is to hold it, and I'd like to just recapitalize it, pull my cash out, go find another 8 unit that I can build an 8 unit in the backyard with the right dirt. So that's kind of the business plan. I don't really, you know, I've been buying multifamily for 15 years, and I try not to sell anything. Um, I'm not a real large syndicator, so I don't syndication is something that I would do if I absolutely needed to, because I can't fund it myself or through, family. But at some point, I'm probably going to have to look at bringing on partners, because, an 8 unit building with dirt in San Diego might be $4 million, something like that. Very likely. So you can only do so many of those before you start. And then the other thing is, okay, how do you fund the construction? So I get a kick out of taking operational cash flow from the existing portfolio and running it into construction. Again, getting that compounding going, right? So your cash isn't sitting in a bank account or in a CD earning 5%. You can run it into an ADU construction project. And like Ash was saying, the returns on these things are quite good. So if you can build a business on doing that and just keep on recapitalizing, once you do your value add project, get it through the process as fast as possible, move your rent roll up, and then recapitalize it, pull that equity out, go buy another, 6 unit, 7 unit, whatever it is, and get really good at that.
Derek, doing a renovation on cash flow from the existing portion of the property can be super painful and take forever. Have you run into issues there?
How much time do you have? So, so from the civil engineering industry, we always talk about how easy it is to build new because there's nothing in your way. When like this 8 unit project, I had structural columns to relocate. I had piping everywhere. I had all sorts of stuff and then you're dealing with a contractor that's looking for change orders in unforeseen, they call them unforeseen conditions, because there's no way they could have gone in and saw that there was a footing there and now it's in the way. And so it's quite a it's challenging to redevelopment is always harder than development. I mean, that's the way I think of it.
So just thinking of it from kind of the turn in your capital, if you went in fully capitalized, ready to change over these 4 units and then get them rented faster, then you can refi faster. Versus if you're trying to do the full renovation off the cash flow of those original 8 units, it's going to take you a heck of a lot longer to bump that value up. Why not just go in fully capitalized? You're a project manager. You can bang this out quickly, get those 4 units up and running, and now you have a more valuable property and you can pull it all back out. Why not go that path versus trying to do it all off the cash flow?
So you're saying fully capitalized on the construction and the purchase of the existing property?
Right, versus trying to do the construction using cash flow.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you've got, this project was 500,000. So if you've got 500,000, what a better place. There's no better place for your cash than where you can control it. What I'm running into is you do enough of these projects and your operational cash flow gets drained. And then you need to look at another business model, figuring out how to take out construction loans for these things. Can you take out a second, that you could carry for a year maybe, and then take the additional operational cash flow from the ADUs and pay that second down super fast, and from your other portfolio as well.
Are
So
the sorry, are the banks pretty liberal in California? Will they not loan on this kind of stuff?
so that it's a little bit new. I'll say that. You Banks want the first, right? So they want to be in first position, and they'll do a construction second behind that first. But if you have, see, the problem is I have killer financing on the original purchase. So it begins with a three. So I don't want to refinance that. There's like this thing you got to figure out: should I refinance into a 5 or 6 and recapitalize myself that way, but I lose the benefit of another 5 years of 3.5%.
What about a
So
portfolio line of credit?
that is also an option. And I will take any recommendations you guys have for me. I'm always looking for better
So
ways to finance this stuff.
I didn't like hearing the word partner because you don't really need a partner. You've got all the knowledge, you've got all the experience. You just need debt. And if you take on private debt from investors, you're probably looking at 10%, right? Um, so I would push these lenders, have them look at your global portfolio and see if you can get lines of credit. And if you need to, move money around so that maybe they get a first position on a property. So it solidifies their collateral a little bit.
Even on this existing property, you already have added ADUs, you already have that rent roll coming in. Your existing lender can probably themselves go put a line of credit on this property, keep your original loan in place. We've done that before. We have a loan at 3.9%. We're not touching, but we've added a ton of value. That same lender, a bank, put a line of credit on that property that is at a higher interest rate, but that doesn't touch our base one. And you've already added so much value to this property, you probably would not have an issue doing that.
Yeah, and they don't mind being behind their own first.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I'm
the
sure
only way they'll take a second. That's right.
the appraisals will come in great.
Yeah, it's just now's not a great time to be going out to the markets. I mean, you guys probably know as well as I do. It's not a great time to be going out right now looking to recapitalize. Um, but I'm not in a big hurry either. I can wait 6, 9 months if I need to. Um, and just enjoy the additional cash flow from the units. But I've got another one in the hopper that is a duplex, and I'm going to be adding 3 units to that to make it 5. So I need to start thinking about how I'm going to fund that.
Also, go to them and ask about a loan to cost. I don't know that you need a construction loan for this, depending on what you're doing. A lot of our lenders will go in with an 80% loan to cost from day one, and then you take draws from them as you go.
Yeah, yeah. I work with a portfolio lender that's local here, and they did a lot better 3 years ago before the First Republic crash and all of that. Um, Now they're just a little bit more, they're kind of looking at First Republic and what happened there, I think, and trying to figure out how they want to work with local investors like myself in San Diego. So it's kind of a and with interest rates going up, it's just kind of blown a lot of things out right now, and there's a lot of conservativeness out there. At least that's been my sense.
So we've been dealing with lending quite a bit recently. The biggest thing lenders want are deposits, right? They want your money so that they can 10x lend it out back to you. So, do you deal with larger banks, regional banks, or small banks?
I've got um, a mid-size. I'd call them mid-size. I mean, they're definitely not Chase size. I mean, that's like the largest, right? But the small banks, in at least in my area, they they're too small. They want car loans and that kind of thing. They don't necessarily want to deal with investors doing the kind of thing I am currently doing. So the bank that I'm with right now, I think, would be willing to do this. It's just a matter of having more conversations with them on it.
I would bank shop heavily and I would try to stick with smaller banks. Find smaller banks that have a commercial division, not just an auto and residential division, but a commercial division. And, your track record, your background, everything you've accomplished, you should be golden for bank loans.
Yeah. Well, part of getting here was having that W-2 job that allowed for um, our. I don't know if you guys play the same game, but for the last 15 years buying multifamily, we played the game of at one time you could run for each spouse, you could run up to 10 loans on that, right? So we were able to, keeping taxes and everything separate, we were able to run 10 each. Um, and now we're kind of at a point where we're doing commercial loans anyway. But like to Amanda's point, I think a portfolio loan, looking at, the whole family portfolio and maybe a line of credit against that, might be a different way of going about it. And then, like you're saying, Ash, just shop the banks in your local area. Um,
there's
so
lenders there's lenders that'll look at you as commodities, and then there's lenders that want to build relationships. So I've dealt with a bank for many years, and I've introduced friends of mine that just needed a loan for something, and they said, we're not interested in one-offs, we're interested in building relationships. So find a lender like that, right, that
yeah.
wants to build a long track record with you. Derek, in your bio, you wrote that you're a big advocate for financial freedom, but you really don't believe most people want to be free. What does that mean?
Well, so I think a lot of people stay in their jobs one, because of an addiction to a paycheck, for one thing. Somebody said, it's not my quote, but they said there's, three primary addictions: drugs, alcohol, and an addiction to a paycheck. So, um, and I found this out after retiring in 2022 from my civil engineering job, basically, that it it's one thing to say I won't have a paycheck, but it's another thing to actually have all the financial obligations of life and not have a paycheck. That's and after, I would say, after a year, you live off of all your reserves, all the saving you did, maybe, and then you're kind of getting to year two where you're going, oh my gosh, like I don't have the bank accounts I had once had. So I think it's 1-2 punch, kind of like in year two, when you first retire to go do a venture like this. Um, I I also feel like a lot of people are addicted to being the boss. I worked my way up the corporate ladder and just shy of president. And you see certain people really just enjoy having a lot of employees and being the boss. And if they were to retire, they'd be lost, you know. Um, and so I don't think they want freedom. I think there's people that really get into the structure, and they need that structure to be productive, if that makes sense. And there's certain people like me, I think a small percentage really, that really want um, to not be, it takes a few layoffs, right? As an engineer, I've been laid off maybe 4 times. Maybe I wasn't that great of an engineer. I don't know. But
And somehow you got promoted to just under
somehow I
president.
got promoted, and maybe I was a good talker, right? Maybe that's not the case. But so I get laid off a couple times, and you realize that, that salary is not dependable. That could disappear tomorrow. And what's funny is, and I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of people talk about this, it's more risky to have a job because somebody else is making the decisions for you as to whether you're needed, right? In our business, we create our own value, right? We do value adds. We seek opportunity, um, and you create your own Shangri-La or your own garbage, right? You either perform or you don't. Um, and I just feel like a lot of people I watched my father go through retirement, and he was lost, and I think a lot of people don't know what to do if they don't have a paycheck, b don't have don't have the guardrails up.
Yeah, and the loyalty only goes one way when you have an employer. If you're going to leave, you're going to give them 2 weeks, 30 days notice. If they're going to can you or lay you off, it's today. There's no
Yeah,
going.
it's you're going over the boat. You're going off
Yeah.
the boat, right? You're getting dumped into the water. And I I'm just making this quick. So as part of 15 years of kind of putting portfolio together, and then reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I wonder if Robert actually knows how many people it's kind of cliche, right? But how many people did he impact through talking about getting assets, right? As opposed to depending on a W 2 job and funneling it into Wall Street. How many people did he impact that went, gosh, I didn't even think about buying assets and retiring off of assets, you know? So I think I read the book maybe back in 2002 when it first came out, and I was still working and I was still trying to climb the corporate ladder. I was like, great, throw it in the pile. And then I got laid off that fourth time, whatever it was. And I had this real epiphany of maybe chasing the president title is not worth it. And maybe there's something to accumulating assets that you can live off of eventually. And it really kind of sunk in. That's when I think it really rooted with me, was after I read the book and started to understand what the corporate life was like, you know?
Yeah, you've got an interesting take on this, and I agree with you. Everybody wants what they think it means to be financially free. But listen, when you're financially free, you're probably waking up earlier than you would have to go to work, right? There's years of grind and that uneasiness, especially if you've got a spouse and kids, not knowing your financial stability or what's going to happen next. That's tough. Not everyone's cut out for that. They all want the lifestyle, and social media perpetuates this shit like nobody's business. You know, these young kids with the cars and, oh, Bitcoin or a startup or whatever stupid business they claim that they have, it's all fake. And that does not help this latest generation.
You and I are on the absolute same page.
Yeah.
Like social media just glamorizes a bunch of fake crap. And that's not the life. The life is a grind that will pay off. And you'll turn around in 20 years and it'll be like, wow, wow. And your friends maybe that stayed with that corporate path and that W-2 are going, you got so lucky.
Yeah, right. That's right.
And you're like, luck had nothing to do with
Uh-huh.
that. That's 20 years of getting beat up. And
Derek, sorry, you learned a hard lesson about a deal. Was that in Louisville that you had,
uh,
or Lexington?
Lexington, yeah.
What, and this is where our audience really gets a lot of takeaways from, is when you talk about challenges that you've ran into. What happened on that deal?
Well, it closed just right before COVID. So the business plan was to get the raise the rent roll, get the non-payings out through the eviction process, and cleaning up the rent roll and pushing it up, and some capex. And so we got hit with COVID. So you had the moratoriums, and so you couldn't execute on that part of the business plan. You couldn't execute on removing the non-paying people. They just continued to float until that was lifted. Um, I go back to the the performas. As an LP investor, you look at the performas and you're like, wow, this is amazing. You know, um, a 3x multiplier, and all these amazing things that are going to happen. And I think I took away from that experience. I mean, we're still in it, so I'm not going to go into great detail, but I will say that, you've heard bet on the jockey, not the horse. Um, as an LP, make sure that your GPs have worked together and have executed multiple exits in not a like perfect environment. So if you can go prior to the GFC, and if they've been together that long, um, and they've executed prior to the GFC, and I mean they're going to have a rock star, performer like resume from 2012 to 2025. They're going to look like rock stars. But prior to that, were they together? And I've heard people like on the LP side say you can invest in a new team. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think if people haven't worked together before and there's not a clear, like who's doing what, and we've worked together, we've executed multiple deals, we worked together for 10 years, there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be problems with the general partnership. and trying to figure out stepping on toes. So once that GP kind of gets not on the same page, then your investment starts to suffer, right? Um, that
Derek, I'm a little surprised to hear you say that even if you still hold it today, things aren't actually going well because it seems like you bought pre-COVID. I mean, we all know what happened to rent and real estate prices in late 2020, 2021, 2022. I mean, it was like a golden era of like 50% increase in the value of almost every property in that time. So, are you guys in the clear now, or are management issues just really causing the plan to just not come to fruition?
it's just once you get uh, the adversarial, maybe with the GP side, um, things don't go as well as they could for sure. And I would say the rent roll has improved significantly. The capex is that needed to happen on that project has been completed, like probably 3 times over budget. Um, and the property's performing, but we still have some things to resolve as far as getting GPs on the same page. And I've kind of gotten more involved in that project because I was more on the LP side. I did raise some capital, and so have some GP involvement, but now I am probably doing a lot more. So I'm flying out there. I mean, that's not your typical LP
Oh no.
role,
Yes.
right?
Now,
Yeah.
I'm
now you're
flying out
babysitting.
there, and like one of the properties I took out of the floodplain, because for me, taking something out of a floodplain is not a big deal, right? I've worked with FEMA before, and we've taken properties out. Um, so we did that, and it just kind of languished since COVID up to now. And the occupancy now is great. It's pumping cash, so I don't really care if we just hold it, until times get a little bit better, and that in the buyer side kind of comes back. Because I think the buyer side right now, I mean, like you and I, and we're looking for deals, right? We're looking for deals that are suffering, and that's gonna kind of put a downward pressure on the values, So now might not be a good time to exit. Maybe if it's gushing NOI, just hold it for another couple of years if you have the runway on the debt side. Your debt doesn't expire and end up turning you into something ugly. Um, so I I I don't mind, especially now since I'm technically retired. I've got my ADU projects here in San Diego. I don't mind flying out to Lexington and getting more involved than a typical LP, just because things are easier for me to get done. Um, if I have to fight with code violations, code enforcement. I don't know if you guys are working on big apartments, but the code departments love these properties, and they love hammering. And so, and if you don't know anything about code, and you're trying to battle with these people, you're at a disadvantage. So I go out there, and I'm meeting with these code enforcement people, and they're just throwing every violation known to mankind at our property, right?
Do you tell
And
them you're from California?
yeah, they know.
Oh, that's probably why. That doesn't help. Big wig from California coming into southern Louisville, right? I mean, that's the South.
Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah, yeah.
Tell them you're from Mississippi or Alabama.
There. I don't think I could pull the accent off, right? Um, so yeah, I think there's some additional involvement. I'm going to be, like anything comes up in this property that would cloud the being able to transfer it to a new owner, I'll probably get fully involved in those things and dealing with, if there's something that ends up having to go down to the city for permits and stuff like that. I mean, those kinds of things are really easy for me. And in dealing with inspectors and all the city folks. Um,
Good for you for doing that. Because I mean, it'd be an inconvenience if you were just an LP. All right, fine. The GP can't get it together to do this. Fine. But you said you also brought in capital for it too. So now it's your reputation in addition to just your LP capital. So, I mean, good for you for doing whatever you can to save it.
that's absolutely right.
Well, Derek, thanks for joining us today. It was great to chat with you. I appreciate how candid you've been with things that are going well and things that are painful for all of us investors. So, if best ever listeners want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Aviera Capital Investments is the company name. You can reach out to me at Derek at Aviera Capital Investments, and I do this uh, vlog on the ADU process. You can find me on YouTube. You can find my channel and watch me suffer through building ADUs in San Diego.
And Aviar Capital is AVIAR capital.com. Sorry,
Capital
Aviar
Investment.com.
Capital Investments.com. Good. Well,
That
thank
that
you,
is
Derek.
correct.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Derek. Thank you, best ever listeners, for joining in today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review and share it with somebody who can find it useful. Please follow, subscribe, and of course, have a best ever day.